Good evening to all of you. In fact, we have already begun the discussion of the plays of Eugene O'Neill. I gave an introductory lecture on Eugene O'Neill, not just one lecture. I gave many lectures on Eugene O'Neill in the previous live sessions. But today I'm just giving a lecture on, not in fact a lecture, it is in fact a summary of the play Emperor Jones of Eugene O'Neill. Emperor Jones, as we know, is one of the major plays of Eugene O'Neill. It discusses a lot of major issues. Say, for example, it's about power. It's about how power corrupts and how absolute power corrupts, like absolute power corrupts absolutely, just like that. It's about the tragic end of an emperor who exploited a group of illiterate, ignorant people in an island. So Emperor Jones has a lot of significance, like it's about symbolism. It has expressionism, symbolism, and we will just look at some of the major themes in the beginning, like the very title of the play. What is the significance? After today, of course, we'll discuss the summary of the play Emperor Jones. Subsequent live sessions, I'll be discussing very important topics like the title of the play Emperor Jones, then the themes in the play Emperor Jones, similarly plot construction of the Emperor Jones, then the hero of the Emperor Jones, then another issue or another very important topic is this play is, of course, a very good example for expressionism. So also it is a psychological drama to a certain extent. It is about the collective unconsciousness. So we'll be discussing Emperor Jones as an example for rather the theme of collective unconsciousness in Emperor Jones. We'll discuss that. Similarly, we have the use of interior monologue in the play. So we'll also discuss the use of interior monologue in the Emperor Jones. Then we have symbolism, expressionism, and of course, the last session will be discussing some critical observations and comments on the play, The Emperor Jones. Now, before just discussing the very summary of the play, let us just look at the important characters of the play, The Emperor Jones. So we have some 5 important on-stage characters. This is very, very important about the significant about this play, Emperor Jones. There are on-stage characters on one side, and there are also a lot of off-stage characters, or these off-stage characters are just hallucinations. So let us just look at the on-stage characters. So one of the important on-stage character is the very titular hero, Brutus Jones. Emperor Jones is Brutus Jones. So Brutus Jones is the major character. Then we have the next important character, that is Henry Smithers. Henry Smithers is the second most important character. We have to understand the fact that Brutus Jones is the emperor of the island, and Henry Smithers is a Cockney trader. He is a trader, and of course he is a collaborator and assistant and helper of the Emperor Jones. Next we have an old native woman. The second, rather third important character is the old native woman, and the next character is Lem. Lem is a native chief, and next we have a number of soldiers, and soldiers are the supporters of Lem, the native chief. Then we have lot of minor characters. I told in the beginning about the on-stage characters and off-stage characters, and now we have a host of a group of minor characters, and those characters are little formless fears, Jeff, the Negro convicts, the prison guard, the planters, the auctioneer, the slaves, the Congo witch doctor, the crocodile god. These are all the other characters. They are, in fact, hallucinations of the Emperor John's. Rather, they are representations of the collective unconscious of the hero, that is Brutus Jones or Emperor Jones. And now we have to understand the very locale or the very milieu or background of the play, the Emperor Jones. Where is the play set? Where is the action of the play set? And in the very beginning of the play, the dramatist tells that the action of the play is on an island in the X. It is set in, the action is on island in the X. So we are not told about a specific locale or a background for the play, but it is somewhere in an island. It could be an island. People say that it is one of the West Indian islands, or it could be any island. So the very dramatist Eugene O'Neill himself doesn't specifically mention the milieu or the locale of the play Emperor Jones, but we have to understand the fact that the play is set in an island, and the natives are a kind of indigenous people, maybe tribal people. Of course, they are not as educated, and they are very superstitious, and because of their ignorant, illiterate, superstitious background, the emperor is easily exploiting, or he just exploits them. Rather, he taxes them, and he makes a lot of money. And ultimately, by the end of the play, we understand that rather in the beginning of the play, what we see is the entire inhabitants of the island. They are protesting against the selfish, cruel Emperor Brutus Jones. So that's as an introduction about the play. Now we have to look at the very story. So although I introduced some of the important topics some time ago, one important theme of the play is the eternal conflict of good and evil. This is again another very theme of important theme of the play, the eternal conflict of good and evil. So this conflict of good and evil was there from the very beginning of the human civilization. We can see that eternal conflict of good and evil. From the time of Adam and Eve, we have the very conflict of good and evil. So the same is the theme of the play, Emperor John's as well. It's about the uh, eternal conflict of good and evil. We will see the play, and of course afterwards we can just discuss why is this play the representation of the eternal conflict of good and evil. That conflict is within ourselves. That conflict is within every human being. And why is it said that the theme of the play Emperor John's is the eternal conflict of good and evil? Okay, so another very important theme is right. We say that this play is, of course, realistic. There is a mixing of this play of Emperor Eugene O'Neill, Emperor John's. The play of Eugene O'Neill is a confluence of realism and expressionism. Why is that? So it can be very easily. So I just say that in the very beginning, because as we move forward, it will help you to understand that this play Emperor John's is a play which depends on realism on one side and expressionism on the other side. Why or how is this play Emperor John's a mixture of realism and expressionism. Okay, so very easy answer to that is scene 1 and scene 8. There are 8 scenes in this play. So scene 1 and scene 8 are realistic. Other scenes of the play, like scene 2 to 7, these scenes are not real. They are the representations of the stream of consciousness of the hero Emperor Jones. They are scenes 2 to 7 are except 1 and 8, scenes 2 to 7 are the representation of the collective unconscious of the hero, Emperor Jones. So this is the very, of course, we have to explain what's happening in scene 1 and scene 8, the first scene and the last scene, because these are the only scenes which are realistic. All the other scenes are expressionistic or just representation of what is haunting the hero, Brutus Jones or Emperor Jones. So we say that this is a play which is based on, which is of course based on realism as well as expressionism. Okay, so with this introduction, we'll be just looking at the summary in this session. So subsequent sessions, we'll be looking at the play in detail, scene by scene. Of course, we shall have some reading out of the dialogues as well. Now we will just understand the very gist of the play, the very summary of the play, the Emperor Jones. So the very Emperor Brutus Jones is the titular hero of the play. Emperor Jones. Emperor Jones is Brutus Jones. So Emperor Brutus Jones is a Negro. He is black. He is a Negro, and formerly, before becoming the emperor of this island, he was a Pullman porter. A porter. He was a porter, right? A Pullman porter who was imprisoned for his crimes. So this is the past of the Emperor Jones. He was a porter and he did a lot of mistakes, and for his crimes he was imprisoned, and later he escapes from the prison. This is the very past of the Emperor Jones. So Emperor Brutus Jones is a Negro, formerly a Pullman porter who was imprisoned for his crimes. He had broken jail and escaped as a stowaway to a West Indian island. So this is important. So he escaped from prison and he comes to a West Indian island. I told you in the beginning. And now, with the help of his white Lieutenant Smithers, now we saw the important on-stage characters and off-stage characters, and one of the important characters is Smithers. So Smithers is white, and with the help of his lieutenant, his general, he has an army, he has a group of soldiers, and the chief of the army is Lieutenant Smithers. So with the help of the white Lieutenant Smithers, Brutus Jones has become the emperor of the island. He has exploited and heavily taxed the Negroes in the island. He has convinced the black people that he cannot be killed by a normal lead bullet, but only a silver bullet, which he has forged for himself. This is the very important fact we have to keep in mind. So there was, of course, an encounter between the native chief Lem and Emperor Jones, and in that encounter, native chief Lem just tried to fire at Brutus Jones or Emperor Jones before he became the emperor, and the bullet somehow, luckily for Emperor Jones, didn't hit him. Brutus Jones didn't hit him, and he convinced the native chief and his followers that he has some supernatural powers, some divine power is protecting him. And he told them that he convinced him or Lem as well as his followers that a Brutus Jones or Emperor Jones can be killed only by a silver bullet. So with this uh, trick, he is just befooling and exploiting the natives of the West Indian island. So he has convinced the black people that he cannot be killed by a lead bullet, but only a silver bullet, which he has forged for himself. He has moved unharmed among his sullen subjects by virtue of this legend of his invention that only a silver bullet could harm him. Once a native tries to shoot him at point blank range, but the gun misses the mark and he is safe only by a stroke of good luck. For some time, the Negroes deify him, worship him, and treat him as a miracle out of the Bible. So thereafter, he slowly becomes the emperor of the island and he controls the people of the island. So now, after this miraculous incident, he is the leader, the emperor of the native people. So now what happened thereafter? Soon the natives of the island stand, okay, now he has exploited them for years. He made a lot of money. He has invested or deposited all this money in foreign banks, especially banks in Europe, to be very precise, in France. And now he knew that, like every leader, every leader who is very shrewd, clever, and exploiting, or rather, who is rather corrupt. Okay, one day I'm going to be caught. Emperor Jones was also sure about the fact that he was going to be caught, or he was going to be there was going to be a retaliation. He knew that one day his corruption will be just known to everybody. It is going to be unraveled. So he was sure about that, and he was making a lot of preparations to flee away from the island. And now, when the native people knew that Emperor Jones was corrupting them, exploiting them, rather misusing them, taxing them, they just retaliate. They start a protest, they start a mutiny, and there is going to be a revolt. And that is the very beginning of the play. That is the realistic scene, scene one. So now let's come to the story again. So after many years of exploitation by Emperor Jones, the natives of the island stand in revolt, in rebellion. They assemble at a distant hill and start the beating of the tom-tom at the rate of the pulse beat to muster strength and courage in the religious ceremony. So I told you in the beginning that these people are rather superstitious. So they have their own pagan ways of worship, and before the commencement of every battle, they do their rituals. So one of the rituals of these pagans or the inhabitants of the island is just beating the drums, and the beating of the drums is heard in the play like tom tom. And the tom tom, the beating of the drums, the tom tom is at the pace of the heartbeat. It's of the rhythm of the heartbeat. It's exactly like the pulsation of a human being. And it's quite interesting. See, we have a lot of expressionistic techniques used in this play, and of course, right, Eugene O'Neill is depending on sound, light, and of course, scenic background, etc. So one of the very effective expressionistic technique used by Eugene O'Neill is sound, and one such sound is the tom tom, the beating of the drums by the natives of the island. And uh, we understand that the heathens or these natives have gathered on a hill in the distance. So, in the very beginning of the play, the sound, the beating, the tom tom is heard from distance. Okay, so slowly, slowly, the sound is becoming louder and louder. What does it imply? It implies that the people, the natives, are coming closer and closer to the palace of the Emperor Jones, and soon they are going to attack. So the sound, the beating of the drums is becoming louder and louder. They are nearing, coming closer and closer. So also the rhythm, the beating is also becoming all the more quicker. So in the beginning, it is normal pulsation, like a normal BP, 72 per minute. But slowly, slowly, the pace is also increasing. What does it mean? The heart beating of the beating of the heart, the pulsation of Emperor John's is becoming faster and faster. It means he is becoming all the more tensed and worried and upset. So, as anybody, okay, when we are upset and worried, our heartbeats will become quicker and quicker. Similarly, it would become louder and louder. Sometimes, when we are maybe very anxious and upset and worried, we may think that our heart is going to break. Like well, you can just hear the beating of the heart against your ribs, the bones, right? Okay, and maybe you feel the tom tom. So similarly, in the play, we have the tom tom in the background. This is a very clever expressionistic technique used by Emperor John. I mean Eugene O'Neill. All right, not Emperor John's, Eugene O'Neill. Right. So the natives, they assemble at a distant hill and start the beating of tom tom at the rate of the pulse beat to muster strength and courage in the religious ceremony. They are participating in a war dance before they start their revolution. Brutus Jones, Emperor Jones, terrified, flies through the dense forest, sees ghosts and supernatural beings. And now I have an explanation. What are these ghosts and supernatural beings? These ghosts and supernatural beings we see in scene 227 are just hallucinations. They are just the very representation of the haunted psyche of Emperor Jones. They are unreal. They are not real. They come from the very cruel past of Emperor Jones. He killed many. He was very rude to many, and all those people who suffered in his cruel hands, just those memories haunt him. And all those memories from the collective unconscious of Emperor Jones is the ghosts and supernatural beings. So he is now trying to escape from the palace. So he is fleeing through the dense forest. So now, on entering the forest, he relaxes on the ground, dead tired and panicky. The rhythmic beat of tom tom is still audible, and he is overwhelmed with his deeper fears and apprehensions when his back is turned. The formless fears creep out of the forest. They are projections of his hidden fears appearing shapeless with their glittering eyes. So now, just to help himself, just to save himself, protect himself, he runs into the forest. And inside the forest, it's almost dark. And in the pitch darkness, he sees a lot of uh, ghosts and what is called formless fears. And formless fears, we have to understand, are just apparitions they are just the ghosts of those people. He thinks that they are the ghosts of those people he killed, right? Now we continue the summary of the play. Further, the gale of the mocking laughter heard in the forest unnerves Jones. So, as Emperor Jones is walking through, not just walking, running through the forest, he listens to the laughter of many people. And all that laughter is the laughter of the people he killed. So he listens to laughter, and the beating of tom tom has been quickened. It is becoming the beating of the tom tom. The war music of the natives is becoming quicker and quicker. It is moonlit night, and Jones has penetrated into the dense forest. His own guilt are incarnated in his imaginary fears. So he killed a lot of people, he killed many, he was rude to many, and all this guilt feeling is haunting him. So his guilts are incarnations. All right. He sees the vision of Negro Jeff, for whose murder he was imprisoned. So this is very important. Emperor Jones was imprisoned for the murder of Negro Jeff. And now this is the very first scene. So in fact, he has a pistol with him, and he says there are silver bullets in the pistol. And now we have seen scene two. In scene two, as he is just going forward through the forest, he sees the apparition, or rather the ghost of native, rather the Negro Jeff, and he is very afraid of the ghost of Jeff, and he fires at Jeff. So by the end of scene 8, we understand that he has just run out of all the rounds or bullets in the pistol. So now he sees the vision of Negro Jeff, for whose murder he was imprisoned, and he is very afraid of the ghost of Jeff, and he fires his revolver to just dispel his fear. He visualizes before him the prison guard whom he had murdered. Now he also visualizes the prison guard. He has also killed the prison guard. So he killed the prison guard and he just ran away from the prison. Now these incarnations of fears emanating from his personal unconscious have disheartened him. He's very disappointed. He fires another round at the guard's back in his defense. So right now he has fired at Jeff, one bullet gone. He also fires at the prison guard, second bullet is gone. All right, and now he is still in the forest. The forest has enclosed him like a prison wall, and the rapidity of the drum beat has increased. His uniform is tattered and he is in rags. So we have as we read the play, we understand how miserable is the condition of Emperor Jones, because he is running through the dense forest. It's pitch darkness, and of course there are a lot of shrubbery, lot of thorny bushes. So all these thorny bushes just entangle him, and he has to wade through the thorny bushes. As he's wading through the thorny bushes, his uniform, his dress is just tear apart, and he's just sweating and bleeding, and he is of course very worried and upset and afraid, and he's just in too much of panic and fear, and very soon he is becoming very exhausted and worn out, and we feel pity for Emperor Jones. But we will not pity him, because he did such a very, very nasty job, and he's being paid for all the nasty job he did in his life. So in the subsequent scenes, the deep fears from the collective unconscious of Emperor John's hold him in their grip, is being uh, moved by, attacked by all the uh, memories of the past. Now we have another ghost, that is the slave auctioneer. There is, in fact, a slave market. Uh, Emperor John's is, of course, a Negro, and Negroes were sold in slave markets. And now he visualizes such a slave market, and we have a scene from the slave market. Okay, so the slave auctioneer, we have to understand that an auctioneer is a person who is just uh, selling the Negroes in an auction. So the slave auctioneer intends to sell Johns to one of his planters. So a slave market, and Emperor Johns is going to be sold to planters. Planters, I think you know the fact that planters are all white people, and people working in the plantations or in the farms, cotton farms, tea plants, all in United States of America. Okay, they were all slaves, they were all Negroes, they were all black people. So there are planters, a lot of planters on one side, other side there are slaves, the Negro slaves, and in the middle is, of course, the slave auctioneer. And the slave auctioneer is intending to sell Johns to one of his planters. The reactions of Johns are full of terror. What are you doing? So we have, when we read the play, we understand that this is, of course, not British English. This is not American English. Then what is this? Okay, the very, very dialect that is used in the play Emperor John's is the dialect of the Negroes, especially the dialect of the slaves. So all the conversations and soliloquies and asides in the play, the Emperor John's is in the Negro dialect. That is, of course, the very West Indian Negro dialect. There isn't much confusion there. Okay, we will maybe when we thumb through 2-3 pages of the play, we understand the very dialect of the Negroes. There isn't any confusion. We will see the dialogues later. Now let's come to the summary here again. So the slave auctioneer intends to sell Johns to one of his planters. In the reaction, now we have Johns reacting to the auction that's going on. The reactions of Johns are full of terror. What you all doing, white folks? What's all this? What are you all looking at me for? What are you doing with me anyhow? Is this auction? John's, and now John's, Brutus Jones, Emperor Jones is very angry. He doesn't want him to be sold. So he takes his pistol. Now keep in mind, 2 pistols already wasted. Okay, he takes his pistol and he fires at the auctioneer and the planter. So now Emperor John's is losing the third and the fourth bullet. Now he fires at the auctioneer. He also fires at the planter and rushes crying with fear. So now he is so afraid that these are all ghosts, and he fires at Jeff, he fires at the prison guard, he fires at the auctioneer. Now, fourth bullet, he fires on the planter. 4 bullets wasted. Okay, so after that, of course, right, he is again very afraid and he is running deeper and deeper into the forest. Okay, now we have another scene. In the last vision, there is the stone altar near a tree. He is naked. Brutus Jones, Emperor Jones, is naked and near the altar to pray. So a Congolese doctor starts a religious dance in which he participates. So there is, of course, a a Congolese doctor. This is in fact black magic. This is necromancy, and a kind of black magic is going on. And now Emperor Jones is also there. So we have the Congolese doctor who is making this ritual, this prayer, and we have, of course, the a crocodile god again. Okay, so a crocodile from the river is summoned by the witch doctor. Witch doctor is the Congolese doctor who is practicing black magic or necromancy, which is in fact in Malayalam Kulotro. So Emperor Jones is there. So the Congolese doctor is invoking the crocodile god to come, and from the river the crocodile god is just creeping towards Emperor Jones, and Emperor Jones is very afraid. And now a crocodile from the river is summoned by the witch doctor. Jones fires his last silver bullet at the crocodile, causing its death and the flight of the doctor. And now he has fired at the crocodile, and he has wasted all the bullets. And in the last scene, which is on a realistic plane, that is of course the eighth scene, Jones has been killed by the natives with a silver bullet. Okay, so now we have the last scene. Now he has wasted all his silver bullets, and at last, eighth scene, which is again realistic, Emperor Jones is lying at the border of the jungle. And in scene 8, we understand that Jones, he thought that scene 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7. Okay, he thought that he's running through the forest, but we understand at the end of the play, that is in 8th scene, that he has moved into the forest. That was just his feeling. Now he is again at the border of the jungle, is lying almost dead there. And now all the native people come there, and they so we have to understand the fact that I told they are superstitious, and they believe that Emperor Jones can be killed by silver bullet, only by silver bullet. So in order to kill him, they have of course made the silver bullet, and at the end they come near Emperor Jones. He's already dead, because it is said that he has died of a broken heart, because he was of course so afraid and so full of fears. He just broke his heart and he died. But by the end of the play, we see that these native people come there, and they have silver bullets with them, so they just ensure that he won't wake up. Okay, so they just fire at him. They have specially prepared, manufactured silver bullets with them, and they fire at him, and he just dies. That is the end of the play. And of course, the native chief becomes the next emperor of the island. Okay, so this is the summary of the play. And in subsequent lectures, today I'm just winding up. So in the subsequent lectures, we'll be just discussing the very source of the play. What made Eugene O'Neill compose or make this play? What was the immediate source, or rather, why did he? What could be the source, or what could be the reason for making a play like Emperor Jones? We will discuss that, the origin and the source of the play, the Emperor Jones. Similarly, we'll be just discussing some of, I told you this is an expressionistic play. So we'll discuss next day, of course, we'll be discussing, next video we'll be discussing the psychological influences on Eugene O'Neill for the making of this play, the Emperor Jones. Okay, so with this, we just conclude today's discussion. Thanks a lot for joining. May God bless you all. Good night.